Hey everyone, let's talk about some mental health today. Today we're going to do some reflection on our past choices and how we view ourselves. Often, when we make choices that have been negative in some way, we often overlook the good that came from those choices. First, the only way to learn is from failure. That's when we learn the greatest things about ourselves, about what we're good at, what we're bad at. Without taking time to have some failures, we don't get to see our successes. Um, I've done multiple different things, and some have been successes, some have been failures. But the biggest thing I've always learned is when I have a failure, I get to step back and say, you know what? Why did this fail? Okay. Maybe I didn't do all my homework. Maybe I wasn't ready enough. But I can look at all those failures and then I can take what I learned from those and institute them in my next opportunity. And maybe that one doesn't quite succeed yet, but maybe I made one less failure. And so at the end of the day, that's a success. Hey, I was successful in this part of it, but I still failed at this part. How do I take that to my next step? Often when we make those failures or those bad choices in life, and usually when I say bad choices is we didn't take an opportunity that we now regret. Usually this stuff comes out when we're a little bit older, um, around 40 to 50 or so, and we look back as I had an opportunity to do this. I spoke to an older gentleman recently, and he had an opportunity to sign with a ball club when he was 18 or 19, and he was so scared of failure that he turned that opportunity down, and now he's kind of beating himself in the head, saying, "What could have happened if I just took the chance?" And he's going to beat himself up for the rest of his life. I kind of informed him of that and let him know, and wasn't really what he's expecting here. But sometimes when we have big life altering choices, we are always going to wonder and regret not to. But I said, look what happened from that choice. You have wonderful children that you adore. So, yes, maybe that choice you're going to regret for your whole life because what could this have been? But look what you got out of it. Um, Always look at the positives in any choice we make. Even if it's a terrible choice that we made that maybe led to somebody getting hurt, um, maybe it landed you in jail for a night or in prison for a small stint. And you can look at it and say, you know what, this is who I've impacted. This is how my life can change for the better because of this. And then you can move on. The biggest thing is when we start looking at our bad choices we make, it starts leading to depression, some low self esteem, some low self worth. There's a cool video out there on Cool Runnings. If you've never watched the movie, it's a really inspirational story of the Jamaican bobsled team. And the kid in it, his dad's very wealthy, and he doesn't have a lot of positive self esteem. And then the one guy who doesn't have a lot, but he's very brash and very almost full of himself to a point, but very, macho and has a lot of respect for himself. Makes the young man look at himself in the mirror and says, "What do you see?" And he doesn't see anything at first, and then he tells him what he sees, like power and pride. It's a very good scene. Look it up on YouTube. I actually watched it in session with the client, and I think he understood the whole self reflection thing. Is sometimes we have to look in the mirror and what do we see? Um, do we see a successful person? Do we see a failure? Do we see good and bad? Ideally, we're going to look in the mirror and see the positives. We're not always going to dwell on those. But if we look in the mirror tonight and say, all I see is a failure, a bad husband, somebody who just gets by, and you have nothing to say about yourself, now it's time to start doing some serious self reflection. If it's that bad, I honestly suggest you go seek out a counselor or other mental health professionals to have somebody to talk to work through those ideas. We should be able to look in the mirror, look at the self worth, and figure out how to start repairing things in our lives. A lot of times this comes in the form of those negative things we've did, and our negative outlook is relationships we've lost, things that aren't going the way we want to, and we're stuck. We're like, how do I start this off? Let's say you have a daughter that you're estranged from, and you want to start repairing that things, and she just it started life. Maybe she has a good friend or a significant other that she's with. Invite her and the significant other out to dinner, because what that does is that gives them backup to where they are more in control of the situation, because it's two versus one then. And don't talk about yourself. Let them do the talking. A lot of times when it comes to parent-child relationships, um, parents don't know how to always quiet themselves and let the child do the talking. Let the child tell you how their day was. Let them tell you what they're feeling, because they don't want to hear about what's going on with you, especially if they're young, you know, 18 to 20 years old. You know, they started college. You know, their whole life's ahead of them, and what they don't want to hear is, you know, you in your 40s or early 50s and complaining about how bad your life is. Well, that's a Debbie Downer by far. I want to hear about how my daughter's doing, how she's excelling, how what I did when she was growing up has benefited her, and hear about her exploits and how she's excelling at school and making new friends and new relationships and blossoming into this amazing person that I helped create. Those, by hearing those back to you and saying, wow, looking yourself in the mirror and saying, great, my daughter is an amazing person. So yeah, I may have did all these mess ups, but you know, now I got something to look forward to is because my daughter's doing great. Or your child. I mean, doesn't specifically have to be a daughter if you don't have one, obviously, but those little things can help us repair relationships. Maybe it's a friend you haven't talked to. Same thing. Invite them and somebody else out. Don't make it just about you. A lot of times when we hear ourselves talk, we always want to talk about ourselves. Everybody wants to talk about themselves. But at the end of the day, sometimes building relationships isn't about talking about ourselves. Share a little bit. Let them share a little bit. You know, find some common ground. Maybe you can laugh about something. Maybe you can joke about something. Find that nice meeting ground, and then figure out how can this relationship be beneficial to us. Because the biggest thing with relationships is they have to be equal. And when I say equal, I don't mean everything's 50-50. A lot of times relationships are, you know, like 70-30, 60-40, somewhere in that range. And those are healthy relationships. You know, we hang out, we talk, and I feel like we get an equal amount of respect and due diligence in the relationships. The ones that are toxic, that aren't good, to where like somebody only calls you when they want to do something because everything else fell through. And you're like, okay, well, I'll go do something because I have nothing else to do. But in the back of your mind, you're saying, well, they don't really value me. I'm just like the last resort. Maybe you can improve that. Maybe you say, hey, look, I like hanging out with you, but I know the reason why you're hanging out with me today is because Jim and Bob both were busy and you were just bored. You wanted to do something. And sometimes calling people out on it, you know, fits. And sometimes that's actually okay. At the same time, if you want to build that relationship to make it more mutual respect, it's on you to make the first call to them instead of making yourself the last resort. I know when I hang out with some of my friends, not all of them are great at texting back. Sometimes they get busy and their work schedules are goofy, and they don't always call. And I used to take that personally. And then I realized they did that to everybody, and then you take that less personally because you're just like, this is just their operating procedure, and they're not very good at this. They like to do things, but they don't like to make the plans. And so if you have friends like that, you can usually find out who they are and acknowledge that, and then you can do that to build those relationships. If you want some homework, I implore you to look yourself in the mirror tonight and ask yourself what you see. If you see things that you're proud of, awesome. If you see some things that are not negative, figure out a plan to fix those. And if it's too bad, obviously schedule an appointment and go talk to somebody to see if, you know, they have some coping skills, some different kind of mechanisms that you can use, finding some meaning and purpose in what you do, and then go from there. So let's reflect real quick, you know, look in the mirror. What do you see? Once you're done with that, let me know in the likes and comments. Nerd happenings. Let's run through this real quick. Controversial game came out. Harry Potter's Legacy. Or Hogwarts Legacy, it's its official name. Heard it's supposed to be a really cool game. I like the world of H.P. Lovecraft, of Harry Potter, and I do like H.P. Lovecraft's world and, you know, mythos. Obviously, if we're going to make similarities, both the people's personal lives aren't really status quo with, you know, a lot of people's views and viewpoints. But at the same time, I can understand people who just appreciate the artistic talent that they brought, the worlds that they created, that have led to so much more artistic talent. without her writings, all the people that worked on the movies and working on games and all the other stuff, they wouldn't have had jobs doing that stuff. So there is a lot of good that comes out of things like this. At the end of the day, regardless of whether we like somebody's personal choices and their viewpoints and their ethical codes or whatnot, just because they don't align with us doesn't mean that we can't still appreciate the things that they made, because what they made was generally inclusive to everybody, and everybody can look back and say, I really like this. I may not like the person who did it anymore because their viewpoints don't align with me, but the world they curated that now is a sandbox that other artists and people can use is very good. And I heard that it has a lot of cool things, a little slights on her and stuff. Again, I haven't played the game. I'm probably not going to. It's not really my style of game. But check it out if you're interested in that. The next thing is cool battle maps. The one thing about my RPG that I like is battle maps. I can go to the store, buy a pack of battle maps, like the one up here, flip through both books, pop out 2 different pages, and I have 100 different types of maps I can create just by flipping through a page and have a different setup each time. I really enjoy those. My biggest downfall when it comes to designing an RPG is maps. I am not a map creator. It is not my forte. It's not something I enjoy. I can create a challenge. I can create a randomization. I can create a world. And I can do some balancing. Obviously, when it comes to an RPG, balancing is a little bit off based on players' ability to whether they're mid-maxers, they're power gamers versus are they just going through the story. So relate that how you can. Other than that, put up a video on Pure Diablo's website and YouTube for theirs on the 2.6 patch notes. I hope to be streaming it next week. Sometime when the patch goes live. I believe it's going live on the 16th, and then the season's falling right after. I may create a single player forum tournament based on some terror zones it's looking like. I'm just going to have to go through that. And then, of course, if you are interested in getting Adventures of Combat and Quest, it will be up on DriveThruRPG sometime in the next week for, I believe, $7. And then I'll also post a video on doing like a character creations just so you can hop to it. So with all that said, have a great weekend, and hopefully the weather where you're at's beautiful, and if not, enjoy the last of winter.